So, and this is the part I hate the most, and it's intimidating sitting here in front of you because you are a professional at this. So,
all good. Yeah. Just be yourself.
Yeah, true. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Creative X Community, and I am here with my good friend, Erick Thompson, who is an extremely accomplished media professional, also moving into the world of running films, amongst many other things at the moment, and family man, and avid runner, and creative person, government employee,
government communications,
and generally just a great community builder, great creative friend. So maybe just to start with, you can tell me a little bit about yourself and just how we ended up in this place and what we're doing.
Well, it's funny you say extremely accomplished. I think it's all subjective, but I've been in the media business for a long time, and I've taken up rucking recently. I don't know if you've heard of that, where you have weight on your back and you hike as a way of cross training. And it's amazing because you really feel it in your quads, and we're climbing up a hill. So, but while I was doing it this morning at 4:30 is when I get up, and we start at 5:15 twice a week. One of the guys I hike with said, "How did you get into this business?" So right now I'm in corporate communications or government communications, but I also have a media background. And I explained, when I was 5 years old, I knew that I wanted to be in, I didn't know what it was. I called it the movie business. So
I guess it's hard for me, like when I say extremely accomplished, because you have run the gamut of pretty much everything in this field, from running your own media company, working in news as both an anchor and as a cameraman, and doing other creative endeavors along the way. And so I think your experience is something that a lot of people coming up through the media kind of climate now are not going to have the opportunity to experience. Like, you've really been through a lot of changes in the media industry, and both creatively and in the broadcast sense. And I mean, it's all kind of creative, but I feel like, yeah, things have changed so much. Let's go back to kind of earlier in your career. I remember you telling me you wanted to shoot the news, but somehow you ended up delivering the news and becoming the anchor of the, fairly prominent local news station. How did that all come about, and what was it that drew you into just wanting to do camera work at first?
To me, it's about the camera eye. I always had that need to shoot things, and I would get a still camera sometimes and pretend I was videotaping things, recording it, filming it, whatever we call it now. And I just always had that interest in capturing things on camera, and sort of documentary style, whether it was photography or film. We call it film. I never know what to call it anymore. Video recording. And but then, it's really funny. When I was quite young, I thought I wanted to be an actor. I just wanted to make movies, be in movies, around movies. I didn't know what it was. But I thought early on, I do not think I'm going to be an actor. It doesn't feel like something that's for me. So I figured if I could be behind the scenes, capturing the footage, making things, and then, it turned into editing. And then I just somehow got into being on air. Because I wanted to learn by doing. So I volunteered at the local cable station. Before that, I used to go to the telethons where I lived, when they would have a live telethon, and sit in the audience just so I could watch the cameras at work. And when I was in high school, when I was doodling to keep busy, I was listening to what was being taught, whereas I think a lot of kids weren't. I was drawing pictures of studios and sets and cameras and stuff.
Would you say that the part where you ended up on air, instead of behind the camera, but being in front of the camera, was that sort of a detour, would you say, or was that?
It was an evolution, and it's all part of it. Even now, I can be on camera, but I'm not in a rush to be on camera anymore. I like to do interviews. That's the only part. I worked in television news for quite a while, and people said, "Do you miss that?" And I said, I certainly don't miss being on camera, but I miss the interviews. I miss the conversations, like what we're doing now. Whether it's a David Letterman type of person who's very accomplished, or somebody who has a great story to tell. When you interview them, or you're part of that conversation, it is a conversation. And it's especially if there's somebody really famous who you can, you might see somewhere and say hi and they're gone. When you're interviewing them, you've got them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, where you can just ask them anything. And you've got their attention. That's a special, interesting kind of interaction. And I know I'm kind of jumping around, but so to answer your question, no, it wasn't a detour. It was an evolution, and it's all connected.
Well, because it's interesting because lately I've been thinking a lot about the detour that has been my career. And I guess it wasn't necessarily a detour. It was kind of an evolution of where I started. I really wanted to be a camera person as well. And cinematography was where my interest kind of lay at the beginning. And that was the path that I set out on. And all of a sudden I had the opportunity to start making documentaries for bigger corporations. As you know, we've worked together on some of those. And that just wasn't really a thing at that time. It just kind of evolved into a thing. And so some of the research work that I've done, we were essentially making a documentary, but for all intents and purposes, it was also a corporate video.
Yeah.
And there was the blurred lines started to happen. And now, what is now called content for the most part, it's so common, but at the time it was a struggle to define what exactly it was, because it didn't feel like a corporate video, but it wasn't really like a film. And it was kind of a documentary, but not really. And there was all these like definitions that were sort of lacking about it. And now we just call it content. And we're all out here telling stories, doing different things. And it's been neat to see how that's evolved. And things like a podcast like this as well, I think are just a fascinating kind of platform to have a discussion. And there really is something for everybody, whatever you're interested in. There's a conversation to be had.
Well, we started off talking about trail running, and that's something fairly new for me within the last 5 years or so. When I run for training purposes, I listen to podcasts, and all I listen to is anything but trail running or athletics. It's all about, I listen to Fresh Air on NPR and The Q on CBC, but arts and entertainment type interviews. And when you're running for training purposes, it can be 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes. It's really interesting when a conversation is going well and you're listening to it and you're running, you're a captive audience in a way that you aren't if you're sitting on your phone looking at a YouTube video with other things going on. Because when you're running, it's in your head. It's really interesting. And if it's boring or not interesting, you sometimes will suffer through it. But for the most part, like I listened to a guy named David Goggins, who's quite a prolific trail runner and interesting dude. Listening to him talk about just why you just have to look yourself in the mirror and just do it, and there are no excuses and stuff. When you're running, you're kind of like, wow, I'm kind of motivated. But I'm veering off again, but he talks about, you don't need motivation, you need discipline. And when I was listening to that, I thought, that's exactly right. The discipline is to get up when you don't want to, early in the morning, when it's cold outside, and just run because you need to train. If you don't train, you're going to hit the race that you're entering. And I'm not racing people. I'm just wanting to finish it and not get injured. But if you don't train properly, you're going to get injured, or you might not finish.
Well, this is interesting. So, while we're on the topic of interviews and podcasts, I also agree, when you're running, your attention span is very different. Like there's nothing else you really can be doing. And so I find with the podcast, like I really prided myself before on never running with headphones. I just wanted to hear myself breathing. It was also almost meditative. Yeah. And I just like the rhythm of my own body and being in the outdoors. But music has that kind of repetitive nature to it. It's like usually a song you've heard. It's not always that interesting once you've heard it 1,000 times and maybe you're like suffering a little bit. It doesn't give you the same motivation every time. And so somebody introduced me to the idea of running with a podcast. And so I tried it and I was like, wow, this really passes the time. And the same could be said for driving, although we're not talking about driving, but anytime you have sort of time to fill where you can't be doing anything else, listening to these longer form interviews of people's stories is fascinating. And it really passes the time a lot faster. I find like it's just, a 2-hour drive or a 2-hour run even can just go by like that.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And there hasn't been a place for these long conversations. I think you and I both in our media careers have probably spent a lot of time telling really short stories, whether it's on the news or through videos that we've made for clients or for other personal endeavors. But you tend to keep things pretty tight because people's attention span when they sit down and watch it, wherever that might be, at their desk or on their TV even, it's pretty short. But somehow when you're out there running like you do for hours and hours and hours on end, I bet you could burn through, that many hours worth of conversation.
Yeah. And sometimes I run out. Anytime I'm in a race, and I call it a race, again, I'm not racing anybody, but it is a organized trail race. I never listen to music. I never have any audio at all. A lot of times if you're out in the middle of nowhere in the bush, you don't want that anyway. But I've worked that out so that I I can train with audio, and I'm fine during a race to not have it on. I was going to mention quickly the trying to capture. Yeah, I've made a few short films about trail running, and trying to capture it in a way that is real and interesting is very difficult because, if you're holding the camera up like this, shooting your face or looking out at the scenery, that can get old pretty quickly. And to try and talk while you're doing it can be difficult because you're breathing and you're climbing up hills and stuff. So my goal going forward is to make a trail running film but by myself. Like we made a film together where we had you and others and lots of people shooting it and drones and everything. People are doing that left, right, center. But to me, I want to try and make a trail running film all by myself that is actually interesting and tells a story. And one of the ways I think you have to do it is I need the little mini drone. And at some point I'm going to have to put the drone up, not to get the fancy drone shot, but there's a few spots in the mountains where it needs a drone. Otherwise it's just too much of your face and your feet.
Well, I feel like the drone thing obviously can be really gratuitous. Like there's a lot of drone shots and I think it's almost overdone, but a well-placed drone shot has the ability to shock and awe the beauty of the world, right? You can show something from a perspective even 100 feet higher than you might be able to see on the ground. It's not a huge amount different, but that's a lot. It's a totally different viewpoint that is stunning, right?
Perspective too.
But also, when used in the right way, I think it really kind of advances the story as well.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. And there are a lot of running films there's lots of slow-mo. There's lots of drone shots that are just for the sake of drones. And I've done that myself a few times. But I think if you are on the side of a mountain and it's in a location that you really want to see where you are, otherwise it's just you stuck in the forest somewhere, then it can really add to the story, I think. And that's what I've learned over the years about camera work is when I worked in television news, I worked for a station that came from the Much Music era, the City TV, where you had videographers and shots were kind of crazy. And as a reporter and an anchor, shooting your own story, when you're editing it, because I'd also edit, all the shots are amazing because you shot them. You love that. You don't, they're not all amazing, but you love those shots. You're attached to everything. So you're trying to, I got to get a shot of that. And I went out of my way to climb this side of this wall to get that shot. So I got to use that. As I've gotten older and edited more stuff, I've realized the value of less is more. So if you've got 10 shots, pick one out of that sequence that's really going to advance the story and help it versus just trying to cram everything in there and it's just a mixed soup of nothing.
Well, and I think that's also your kind of coming from that short story angle as well. Like there's no room for flab, right? Like you need to be ruthlessly efficient about the story and anything in there that doesn't drive the story forward or doesn't advance the agenda, it needs to go. Doesn't matter how much time you spent making the shot, right?
YouTube analytics will tell you every time. The running films I've made, they're all pretty short, but after 3 or 4 minutes, if people are starting to peel off, it's not necessarily just because of the shots, it's because of the story. Where did you grab them? And that's, again, going back to that idea of making a trail running film by myself and making it interesting. You're trying to tell a story, but you don't want to try and make stuff up. Like if you're doing it chronologically, I went here, I went there, and that's really kind of boring. But then to try and amp it up and say, and I was feeling bad and my stomach, because I've done runs where everything kind of worked out. And how interesting is that? Well, then don't call it a documentary. We'll call it here's a YouTube video about my run. And that's it. It's nothing more. It's not an exciting film. But, I've always joked that if I do a trail run and I'm shooting it and the grizzly or a bear comes out and now we've got a story. I don't want that to happen though. Or I fall and injure myself. I don't want that to happen. But that does add to the storyline a little bit, unfortunately.
True. On that note, I mean, running, I don't think people think of running as being inherently creative, but I feel like a lot of creativity happens while running.
Absolutely. We talked about podcasts and listening. It's educational. You can listen to an ebook. You can learn Spanish if you want. You can do a lot and absorb a lot while you're running. I think for me, when I am trail running for an actual race, I really do want to listen to my body. And that's how I get through these long runs because I'm not the most fit person in the world. And I can pull back a bit so I don't have a hamstring issue or a calf issue. I can not push too hard so that I don't get too tired and those kinds of things. So there is some creativity in that way. But for me, I like trail running because of the challenge, and it causes me to stay in shape, or forces me to stay in shape during the off season, as I call it. But then I also want to make short films, and I don't really have a lot of time. So I realized a few years back, 2019, when the first film we did together, was if I'm going to put on all that effort to do this run and train for it, I'm going to add in the filmmaking part of it and put the two together. I'll make it creative, but it's not that interesting. People running and races are not super interesting for the most part. Like, you can make them interesting, and there's storylines that are cool. And, Courtney DeWalter, who's a very well-known trail runner, I've seen some great videos with her. But it's not like mountain biking or, snowboarding, because that's inherently exciting and, dare I say, even sexier than running.
Well, this is the interesting thing. I mean, there's something about running long distances that's not really like visually appealing for most people to watch, I would say. I mean, watching the Olympic marathon is probably not the most exciting thing versus watching maybe the 100-meter sprint, where you can see the whole race unfold right before your eyes. But I guess where I was going with that more so is like, how much of your creative process happens while you're running? You might be listening to a podcast, but in the moments maybe in between that, or when you're not, or maybe while, are you coming up with ideas while you're running, things that you want to do, sort of brainstorming while you're out there, pounding the trail, or whatever you call it, pounding the pavement, not pounding the pavement?
Absolutely. And I've actually been listening to a podcast about something really interesting, an interesting actor or a filmmaker, while I've been training. And my mind starts to take off on an idea, either about a trail running film or just another idea. And I've turned it off so I can focus on that thought. And then I turn the creative stuff off, the interview, and go through my mind what I was just thinking about, and try to keep an eye on it and kind of document it. And on occasion, I've even stopped and got my phone out and made notes, because I found something that was interesting. The other thing is, you're listening to a podcast while you're running, and the things they're saying are actually resonating with things I've done or thought of. And so I'm going back and forth between that, planting a seed and me taking off on it, and then coming back and listening to what they're saying. And it's there's a lot going on, but the time to be creative and think is definitely there when you're trail running training. And the other thing too is, in actual races, I go through like a cycle of, I'm thinking, I always try to stay tuned in. What's going on with my body? How do my legs feel? How does my nutrition? Am I hydrating? And then I think about my family, things I'd like to do, places I'd like to go. So you go through this constant cycle of those things. But the nice thing about it is, at the end of the day, you come right back. It's that flow state. We talked to Gary Robbins about that for one of the films we did. The flow state of just one foot in front of the other. And it's freeing to be in an event like that, where that's all you're really thinking about is your next step, so that you don't bail. And are you taking care of your nutrition and your hydration and all those kinds of things? That's kind of a meditative place to be.
Agree. No, I couldn't agree more. I also think, so when you said that, running is inherently maybe not as sexy as some of these more extreme sports that you can see people doing backflips or whatever. Yes, for sure. In some ways, I totally understand that. But, on the flip side of that, going back to 2019, this film we keep referencing called 50, I don't want to give away the plot, but when you think about that, I mean, I remember our initial conversations around that, and I thought, you know what? You want to make a running film about this accomplishment you want to do. You're going to run 50 miles through this incredible trail that is going to be difficult. That's hard. But when I thought about it initially, I thought, but you're like a good-looking,
middle-aged.
I was a really good-looking middle-aged man that, living a pretty decent life. There's not really a whole lot of, in the way of you accomplishing that, short of the fact it is a massive accomplishment to do that and challenge for sure. But I remember thinking, how is this going to be interesting? For the same reasons you're saying that running's not that interesting. But what I didn't understand in that moment was, we initially were talking about Banff Mountain Film Festival and trying to put this on the film festival circuit and I guess I went to this place where, to get into those kind of things, you have to have this extreme sort of the most quintessential crazy story to latch onto to get into a film festival like that. And that's most of what I'd seen had been that kind of, shock and awe kind of documentary about somebody who had, come from extreme adversity to accomplish something. And I looked at you and was like, well, your life's pretty good. What's so extreme about this? But eventually when the pandemic hit and then those film festivals weren't around, I think you came to the conclusion, you can tell me a little bit more about this, but that maybe YouTube was a good place to put this film. And that is where my idea about what we had created in that moment, and really it was your direction and your idea. And I was like, sign me up. I'm 100% there. I'm along for the ride, but I just never quite understood. But when you put it on YouTube and the response that film got from a whole bunch of people just like you out in the world, that blew my mind. And it completely shifted how I started to think about media, actually. And I would never have thought that film would have got that kind of traction, because it got hundreds of thousands of views pretty quickly, and immediately had such a positive comment stream and community building around it. Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, I did a 30K trail run on that same route the previous year, and I did not train properly. My nutrition during the race was awful. My stomach was hurting, and I was sore for 5 days afterwards. 30Ks in the mountains when you're not a long distance trail runner is very difficult, and I was ill prepared for it. So after that, I said, I want to try that again, but I want to make a film about it. That's where the seed was planted, to make a film about trail running. Because like I said, if I'm going to put in the effort, I want to combine my love of creative filmmaking and this new thing I'm trying is trail running. My wife said, who's been really, really helpful and supportive, said, can't really do the 30K because there's 2 races. The other one was a 50 miler, 80 kilometers. She said, I think you probably need to do the 50 miles. And at that time, it's hard to tell people and explain this, but most people actually can understand it if you just say, I'm going to go run 50 miles in the mountains. That's it. It's just, that's crazy. And people have said, what's a marathon? So that's 42 kilometers. I'm like, what? So I was that guy that I was not ready to go do 50 miles in the mountains, but now I had a purpose. So I trained for it and I did it, and it took me 17 and a half hours. And I was running with somebody who, for anybody that knows long distance trail running, Matt, who helped us, Matt Fortuna, he finished the Fat Dog 120 mile race in 2017 in 29 hours. Like, that's amazing. He was third. So he came along with me and we did it in 17 hours. He probably could have finished that in 10 hours. But anyway, the accomplishment for me as a 50-year-old, I think, resonated with people online. They're like, wow, okay, I'm close to that age and I'm thinking of trying to do long distance trail running. And so it gave people some kind of inspiration. And I like that. I think that's because I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not trying to win awards. I'm not trying to do anything. I just wanted to make a film. And then going back to your point was I wanted to get it into a film festival. I got into some film festivals, but the big ones for me, the Banff Mountain Film Festival, Banff International Mountain Film Festival, I think it's called, I forget, and then the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival. I didn't get into those. So that's why I figured I'm going to keep trying. But the whole point of all of this for me is just do it. I'm not waiting for permission for someone to tell me I can go make a film. I got my friends. I got money. I paid each of my friends some money to go and help shoot this for me and to make our own aid stations, because that race that year was canceled. So we just made it. And a couple 100,000 views on YouTube. I was happy with the outcome. It wasn't award winning necessarily. But I was really happy that I was able to pull it off. And it's the same with doing these long runs. I'm not a long distance trail runner who's going to be on the top 20. But for me to actually pull it off, every time I do that, I feel really fortunate that I was able to get out there. Because I know lots of people who could run really fast and really long, but they have a knee issue or they have a hip issue. Or there's people financially, it's not possible to train that much and to enter these races. And I'm just an average guy, and I just not going to wait for someone to say, here, go do this. I'm just going to do it.
I mean, to me, the accomplishment itself was kind of mind blowing. I mean, I saw the conditions that you were running, and we stopped along the way to film you, obviously, and help with some aid station related things and just see you through it. And at one point I went up part of the mountain. I just thought, this is crazy. So yeah, the accomplishment was massive on its own, but it's just like, who's going to watch this? And that was the part that just blew my mind, that there was a bunch of other people that were so inspired that were thinking, hey, I'm turning 50 also. And what could I do? Like, that would be sort of monumental and a big achievement that, yeah, why not? And what can I do to get motivated out in life and achieve something like this? And maybe they were runners, maybe they weren't, but I just thought it was really cool. And I guess one part of this podcast is the idea that creativity builds community. And I think that is a perfect example of what happened with that film. All of a sudden you had this community building around this idea that you had put out in the world. So it wasn't just about the run, which was extremely hard and a huge accomplishment, but it was about a whole bunch of other people banding around you saying, hey, if he can do that, maybe I could do something like that. Or how could I do that? You know, it motivates people to think about their own lives, and that's huge. And I mean, had those got into those film festivals, they would have had a nice audience, of course, but I'm not sure that many hundred thousands of people would have watched it. I think that the ability to connect with people now is just so incredible.
Projects like the one you're working on here are a good example of where you just have to capture a story and present it. And if thousands of people like it, great. If a few people like it, great. But it's really about quality, not quantity, I think, in storytelling. I'm not saying this is huge quality. Some people will resonate with it. Other people won't be interested. But just by, I think the new technology we have available makes this way more approachable. You know, it used to be back in the day, the only way you'd do something like this would be for television. And in that way, it has to be very mainstream, and there's lots of money and lots of people involved. What was really fun for me on that film we did in 2019 was that I had a bit of a vision. It was made better by the other people who came and joined me, and that they did band around me to make this film. And it was just so much fun. Like, it was like summer camp. You know, we're in the mountains doing stuff outdoors, which we all love doing, and we're being creative, which we all love doing. We had drone operators and camera operators, and it was just like a team of people that came together to make something fun. It's not necessarily going to get a huge award, but it was absolutely worthwhile doing it. It was so much fun. And even to this day now, I've got this fun little film that when I look at it, I'm proud of the fact that it was like a traveling circus. We just got cameras and got stuff and put it together. And the interesting thing about that was that on YouTube, I would say 99% of the comments were really positive. And I was blown away by that, because YouTube, just like Facebook, can be a challenging place. People just want to be negative for the sake of being negative. I only had 1 or 2 comments, and they weren't even really negative. Like, one guy said, "Oh, you got all this gear, you know, you don't need all that stuff." It's like, what are you talking about? You need decent shoes, and you got to have some stuff. And I don't know why he was being like that. And then another person was negative about, they said, "Is that really a run? You know, you guys seem to stop a lot." So we got to stop at an aid station and fuel up. But that's the way trail running works. Like, the elite people, they're not stopping much, but they still stop.
Well, I think the idea about trail running, I mean, it's becoming more common for people to understand this, but I always thought that you'd like running 50 miles straight. But I mean, there's parts where you're speed hiking.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, the terrain, you know, on a road running race, what's like a maximum road grade would be 10%. That'd be a huge hill.
Yeah.
Right? That'd be a massive hill. Trail running, 35, 40% grade pretty easily in certain spots, right? And so, yeah, you're not going to be sprinting up that.
No.
But it's a long haul. You need to pace yourself. You need to manage your energy. You need to manage your mental kind of state as your body starts to shut down, and you need to keep going. And
yeah, the trail running films that I've made, and then subsequent interviews that I've done with other trail runners and people who are involved in athletics, gained some traction on YouTube in a way that was really inspiring, because people hadn't heard people talk in that way before, or talk about some of these topics, who weren't trying to sell something. It was just, I knew a person and I interviewed them and I put it on YouTube. And it connected with people where they said, "Why have I not heard this person before?" Our friend Louise. And she was one of the subjects. And does she have a book? Because if she does, I want to buy it. And she doesn't. She just was willing to offer her nutritional experience and her athletic experience for free. So that got me thinking. That's why we're in my garage, is I want to set my garage up so that I can do those interviews more regularly. And this hasn't happened in here yet, because we just set it up today. I've got a drum kit for the same reason that I went and started trail running. I just had an opportunity to get a drum kit, and I've got little children. So I thought, I'm just going to put the drum kit in there. It was not expensive. And every once in a while, they'll come in for 2 minutes and just bang, 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 bang. I do the same. No interest in really learning drums. Maybe I will later on, but it's like putting a guitar in the corner and see what happens.
Everybody needs sort of like a mucking around space.
Yeah.
you know, somewhere where you can freely create. And, you know, it's funny, I was talking about this earlier with someone else, but just when this one was younger, we let her just, well, still like get paint all over the place, right? There's paint all over the floor. But when your kid is like 5 years old, 6 years old, to have that freedom to just make stuff.
Yeah, it's freeing. Yeah, that's a really good point. This is having a space where you can just be creative and just do whatever you want is the adult version with a bunch of equipment of a child having the floor free with some paper and paint. And maybe they paint the floor and the paper.
On the note of all these things, what's next in the life of Erick Thompson, creatively and running wise?
Well, for me, I'm going to be turning 60 in a while. I've still got a few years away. And I really want to make a trail running film where I do everything on my own. Just, I think as part of the angle of the film, so to speak, the plot, which is to try and do a 100-miler, which I've never done and would be very, very difficult. But also to record the whole thing myself and do it in a certain amount of time. So there's a challenge that, can I get under these, you know, I'm 30 or 35 hours. Can I keep safe? Obviously I need, because I'm going to be running through the night. And can I use camera equipment in a way that hasn't necessarily really been done? And I don't want it to be someone watches it and says, oh yeah, it's okay because, you know, he was shooting it by himself. No, I want them to be able to watch that and go, that was an interesting film. There was a story. It was technically good, but pull it off in a way that uses every skill I've possibly got and getting some equipment that's going to make it viable and interesting.
Why? I have to ask why by yourself. I mean, because you hear all these things, a lot of people would say collaboration is the key to making the best whatever it is that you're going to make creatively. And I agree on some level, like when you get together and you get a bunch of really creative minds, you can have some magic and make something amazing. But what is it about by yourself that's so important?
Well, I agree with the collaboration, and anything I've worked on, I've always found if you're open to other ideas and other input, it's that much better. But for me, it is my angle, because trail running films right now, there are a lot of them. 99% of them are drone shots, camera crew, all these other things going on. And I need an angle. I want to make a film that has something different, that stands out. And for me, it's the challenge. Like, it's a challenge to go and do a race, but to do self-supported, where I have to literally go and pump water out of a river and clean it while I'm running with no support whatsoever. That's in itself is a story. But then to shoot all of that myself, Survivor Man, Les Stroud, he went out in the bush and shot stuff by himself, and it's really, really difficult. But to do it and make it interesting, and it's not all about him shooting it, but that's part of the story. The cameras and the equipment are part of the story, but not the story. The story ultimately is, what was the challenge? What were you trying to do? So I figure if I can combine those two things into a short film, I might have something that will one day get into one of my favorite film festivals. And it's not a narcissistic thing. It's a creative, it's setting a bar. That's what it is. Setting a bar physically, setting a bar creatively. Can I reach it? And if I finish it and it doesn't get into a film festival, I will have pushed the bar forward. How about that?
Well, on that note, I wish you the best of luck with that. Whatever comes next in your solo filmmaking / running career, I think you'll be able to do it. And of course, if you need my help, I'm here for you.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, no, thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
For everybody that's out there in the world, where can we find your work on the internet?
ET2 Media is my YouTube channel. I share that with my wife, and I've basically been just putting trail running films on there and interviews, and I'll just keep putting stuff on there, but it's ET and then the number 2 Media.
Most excellent.
Thank you.